They say a house has a heartbeat, you know. This one. This old Victorian with its gables and its wraparound porch. It has beat for over a century. Its rhythm is the squeak of the third step, the sigh of the oak floorboards in the hall, the whisper of the willow tree against the nursery window. And for 75 years, my life moved in time with that heartbeat. I thought I knew every secret it held. I was wrong. The biggest secret wasn't in the walls. It was in the mirror. It was my sister, Eleanor. We were twins, Eleanor and I. Mirror images, everyone said. But even as children, the glass was warped. Eleanor was the leader, bold, decisive, full of charm and noise. I was the quiet one, content with my garden and my books. Our parents adored her brilliance, her wit. They tolerated my silence. I was the still water, she was the crashing wave. They found her fascinating and me, forgettable. A placeholder in my own life. But I never minded. I had Arthur. Arthur with his warm laugh and patient eyes. We married young, when roses still had meaning and love letters still smelled of ink and lavender. He was the only one who ever looked at me and saw a universe. He'd find me in the garden, lost in a book, and he wouldn't ask what was so fascinating about the words. He'd ask what the words made me see. He built me bookshelves that reached the ceiling, and when the children came, he built a swing on the willow tree, its rope grooves still a scar on the strongest branch. He built us a life inside this house, our children's laughter echoing down the halls, the scent of bread in the mornings, his pipe smoke drifting through the parlor like prayer. I can still feel the ghost of his hand on the small of my back as we danced to a crackling radio in this very room. We were the center of our own world, a world that felt as permanent as the foundations beneath us. But time has a way of stealing everything except the echoes. Arthur's gone now, 5 years gone. And though the house still breathes, its song has changed. Now it is only me, my son David, his wife Chloe, my grandson Julian, and Eleanor. The pressure began one Sunday like the first chill of autumn. Dinner had barely cooled before the chorus began. The offer on the house is substantial, May. The upkeep's too much for you. Your medical bills, your safety. It was a campaign dressed as concern. And Eleanor, I twin my blood, was the general. She would lay a hand on my arm, her touch like chilled marble. We're only thinking of you, dear. Arthur would have wanted you to be safe. She wielded his name like a key, unlocking a guilt I didn't even know I carried. How could I fight what Arthur would have wanted? They had turned my greatest love into my greatest liability. They called it care. I called it siege. The fall didn't help. One missed step, one foolish tumble down the back stairs, and suddenly I was a liability. A trial period, they said. Just until you're stronger, May. They moved me to a tidy apartment that smelled of disinfectant and loneliness. A beige box with a window too small for the world I loved. Eleanor held the key to the house. She was, after all, my twin. My trusted guardian. My jailer. I felt myself fading there, like a photograph left in the sun. Julian came one Saturday. My sweet, curious Julian, all kindness and sharpness wrapped in youth. He brought me a scanned letter he'd found in a dusty box in Eleanor's attic. A letter written by our mother, dated 1948. The words looked ordinary until they didn't. The baby is finally sleeping through the night. It's a blessing, with Eleanor still being so unwell from the, well, you know. We will never speak of it again. She is May's twin now. That is all that matters. She is May's twin now. The words crawled across my spine like frost. The first crack in the foundation. Julian, with his university access and his curious brain, began digging. Birth records, archives, hospital files. He found nothing, no twin births that year. Only one baby girl. Born to a woman named Eleanor Sarah Ziegler. My sister was my mother. Our parents were my grandparents. And my entire life, was a lie 70 years deep. It wasn't just a fact. It was a seismic shift that rearranged my entire history. The time she stole my doll and broke it, not as a jealous sister but as a resentful mother. The way she'd sometimes look at me with a strange, yearning hatred when I sat on our father's lap. It was all different now. The narrative of my life was a palimpsest and the true story was bleeding through. I remember staring into the mirror that night, the same one that hung over our fireplace for generations. For the first time, my reflection looked like a stranger. The light of the lamp caught the silver in my hair and the lines on my face. And I thought, how much of me is mine? Every memory, every story, every smile. Was it all built on a lie told by a frightened young woman? But betrayal doesn't stop there. It multiplies. Arthur's lawyer, Mr. Abernathy, told me quietly one afternoon that before Arthur passed he'd added an amendment to his will. Eleanor was a joint executor, and she held power of attorney. Should I ever be deemed mentally unfit? He was worried, Mr. Abernathy said, avoiding my eyes. Eleanor told him you'd been having spells. Confusion. He wanted to ensure you were protected. The genius of it was breathtaking. She hadn't just positioned herself. She had poisoned the well of Arthur's trust with lies about me, so his final act of love was in fact a shackle. From her beige tower she declared me unfit. And with David's help they began selling the house. My house. Arthur's house. Our heartbeat. They had not only stolen my home. They had stolen my history. My name. My very place in the world. They thought I was a frail old woman they could shelve like a dusty book. But they forgot. The oldest trees have the deepest roots. And the most patient wrath. Revenge is not thunder. It's water. Drop by drop it shapes the stone. I did not rage. I did not plead. I began to whisper. Julian became my ally, my voice in the digital ether. I gave him a list. David's finances. Eleanor's hidden assets. The Henderson Group's inflated offer on the house. The web was vast and truth was waiting in its corners. Look for a sailor named Thomas Rigby, I told him, the name a ghost on my tongue from the fragments I'd pieced together. And find out who on the city council owes Arthur a favor. There will be one. Arthur was always collecting strays. While Julian dug through ones and zeros, I began my quiet campaign. I played the part, sweet forgetful May. The docile mother. The compliant sister. The fading shadow. But in silence I planted seeds. I told David I'd hidden something precious. A box from his father tucked somewhere in the house. He said it was for you when the time was right. Sucks, I think. Or maybe those gold coins he was always talking about. But you mustn't tell Eleanor. You know how she feels about his silly sentimental clutter. I asked him to keep it secret from Eleanor. I watched his eyes narrow, suspicion blooming like rot. Greed is a powerful herbicide for family loyalty. I invited Eleanor for tea. Poured her jasmine. Spoke softly of our childhood. Of Mother's strange letters. Of her illness. I had the strangest dream, I murmured, stirring my cup. Of a man in a navy uniform. He had your eyes, Eleanor. He was standing by the willow tree but I couldn't see his face. Do you ever dream of strangers? And in that brief flicker, that tremor of fear in her hand, I knew she remembered the lie. Julian's discoveries grew darker by the week. He found Chloe's gambling debts. The late-night payments, the quiet panic. It wasn't just one account but three, a tangled web of desperation. Belmere Boutique. High-stakes haven. The usernames were a diary of her shame. He found the Henderson Group's inflated valuation was due to a secret rezoning deal. A favor from one of Arthur's old council friends. A man named Gerald Miller, whose career Arthur had saved from a minor scandal 30 years prior. The gratitude of a politician is a short-lived thing, but the memory of a held-over favor is long. And he found a name. The sailor Eleanor once loved. The man lost at sea. The reason the lie began. Thomas Rigby. A photograph, young and handsome in his uniform, his arm around a beaming, youthful Eleanor. Felt happy. Unburdened. A woman I had never known. Grief became deception. Deception became control. And control became Eleanor's God. So I wrote a letter, never to send but to be found. A letter mentioning the sailor Eleanor's heartbreak. And her unwellness. I wrote of my confusion, my dreams of this Thomas fellow, my worry that Eleanor's old grief was making her act erratically. I made it sound like the rambling of a fading mind, but the facts were there buried like shrapnel. I left it where the house gossip, Mrs. Brewer, would accidentally find it. And like smoke through cracks the rumor spread. The whispers began to return to the walls, the way the old house remembered truth. The pressure mounted. David and Chloe's marriage began to crack. He confronted her about a mysterious withdrawal. She screamed that he was a failure. The sounds of their crumbling union were a distant symphony to me. Eleanor's perfect composure chipped under guilt and paranoia. She started calling David at odd hours, questioning his loyalty, asking if he'd been talking to me. The general was losing control of her troops. I sat back in my beige armchair, a silent gardener watching weeds pull themselves apart. Then I began the final act. An anonymous email to Chloe's creditors, with David's financial details attached. Not a demand but a helpful suggestion. Mr. David Evans is now in a position to settle these accounts. Let them be the hounds. Another whisper to the council about the rezoning fraud. A letter on folk concerned citizen stationery, asking if Councilman Miller was aware his old friend Arthur's widow was being manipulated and defrauded through this deal. I appealed not to his morals but to his fear of scandal. And finally, a call to Mr. Abernathy. I requested the final signing, the sale, to be held at the house itself. I said I wanted to say goodbye. I need to feel the floorboards one last time, Harold. For Arthur. They gathered in the living room just as they had for years of Sunday dinners. But the air was different now. Heavy. Predatory. David restless. Chloe pale. Eleanor efficient as ever. And I, leaning on Julian's arm, the picture of fragility. Before we end this chapter, I said softly, I have a gift for you all. Julian. The lights dimmed. The projector whirred to life. And on the wall, the same wall where Arthur once hung our wedding portrait, the truth began to play. Chloe's voice, harsh, panicked, demanding they push me into signing. David's email, questioning my sanity, asking Eleanor if she could speed things up. Eleanor's message to the buyers. Don't worry. I'll handle the family. The room erupted. Voices collided like crashing glass. Accusations flew. And then I said one word. Quiet. I stood tall. My back straight. My cane still in my hand but no longer a crutch. And my voice was no longer the whisper of an old woman. It was the thunder they thought would never come. You thought I was a book you could close, I said. You were wrong. I've been reading you. Every page. Then I turned to Eleanor. Mother. The room froze. Her face blanched. Her lips trembled. You don't know what you're saying, she whispered. I know everything, I said. 1948. You gave birth to me. Your lover was lost to war. Your parents forced you into silence. That silence became a lie. And that lie became my life. I took a step closer. You were not my protector. You were my jailer from the day I was born. And this, I gestured around the room, was your final sentence. She shook her head, tears beginning to fall. I did what I had to. No, I said. You did what you wanted. You controlled, you deceived, and you let me live a story where I was the extra, the shadow beside your guilt. You could have told me when Arthur died. You could have told me when I turned 50. But you didn't. You needed the lie. It was the only power you had left. I turned to David. And you, so eager for inheritance you forgot decency. You betrayed your father's name. You let them lock your mother away for the price of a new car and a clean slate for your wife's addiction. You are not the man he raised you to be. Mom, I didn't know. You didn't want to know. My voice broke then, but I kept it steady. Chloe, your debts are yours alone. You will not drag my son into them. The hounds are at your door, dear. I suggest you face them. Finally, I turned to Mr. Abernathy. The amendment was signed under undue influence. I have proof. I'm contesting it. And as for the Henderson deal, it's dead. The councilman knows everything. The house, I said, my voice filling the space Arthur's love once had, is mine. It was always mine. I looked at them all, 3 generations of deceit. Then I looked at the window. The willow tree swayed, whispering against the glass like applause. Get out of my house, I said. And they did. One by one, with silence heavier than grief. That was a year ago. The house is quiet now, but not lonely. Its heartbeat has slowed. Steady, peaceful, like an old song remembered. David calls once a week. Our words stumble over guilt, but there's love under the rubble. He is seeing a therapist. He talks about Arthur a lot. I think he's trying to find his way back to the man his father was, hoping it will lead him back to himself. Chloe is gone, chasing her own death somewhere in the wind. I heard she moved to another state. The last I knew, the collectors had found her. Some battles you can't run from. And Eleanor lives in a lovely retirement home. I visit her once a month. We do not speak of the past. We sit by the window. And sometimes she hums a song I half remember from childhood. Maybe it was hers. Maybe it was mine. It doesn't matter anymore. Last time she looked at me, her eyes clear for a moment, and said, "You have his chin." She didn't say whose. She didn't have to. It was the first true thing she'd ever given me. I walk through the halls of my house each morning. The light touches the dust motes like stars. The oak floors creak a greeting. And the mirror, that old haunted mirror, shows me someone I finally recognize. Not the spare. Not the twin. Just May. Just me. The architect of my own peace. The keeper of my own truth. They say justice has a cost. And it does. It costs you the luxury of innocence. It makes you look in the mirror and see not just a victim but a strategist. A weapon. But peace, real peace, is priceless. So I keep the garden tended, the porch swept, and the curtains open wide. For after all, a house with nothing to hide deserves the sun. Grandma Mae, if this story whispered to your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe, share, and come back next Sunday. I'll be waiting by the fire with another secret the world forgot to tell.